In this video, we're going to look at some of the most common Moodle issues and questions and walk through solutions to ease your stress. Notably, most of the questions I receive are related to the Moodle Gradebook, grading, feedback, quizzes, and overall course availability. One of the first things to note is understanding your Moodle dashboard and how courses are displayed for both you and your students. The dashboard organizes courses into 3 categories: in progress, future, and past. Courses are placed into these categories based upon the start and end dates of the course. For courses automatically added by the system, course start and end dates align with the semester schedule. Courses move from future to in progress 30 days prior to course start date, and courses are placed into past courses 14 days after the course end date. Manually created courses may have no end date in order to remain in the In Progress tab for easy access. If you notice a course you are teaching no longer appears in your In Progress tab, check the Past tab and edit the course end date to move it back to In Progress. Another thing to keep in mind is that if you have your course hidden from students, it will appear lower on the page or even on a second page, or in my case, the 41st page of the In Progress courses. Moodle prioritizes courses on the dashboard by active courses in which you have a teacher role, then active courses in which you have a student role, then hidden courses. So as long as you have the course hidden, it's going to appear lower on the page, and you'd want to change that to visible in order to move that up the page. Okay, next let's dive into some common grading issues. Most of the issues and questions related to grading involve quizzes. The quiz module by default is set to not allow students to review the quiz questions, their answers, or view their points and feedback. These settings must be set for each quiz you create. So let's go into a quiz. The initial setup, under Review Options, there are an overwhelming number of boxes that often confuse people. The simplest way I know how to explain this is that most faculty will have quizzes close at a certain time and therefore use the After the Quiz is Closed column. So check the attempt and points, and after the quiz is closed column, students will be able to review the questions on the quiz, the answers they put, and see their quiz grade both in the quiz module and in the Moodle Gradebook. Something that's important to note is if you plan on leaving feedback on the student's quiz, for an essay quiz, for example, or just comments on multiple choice questions, you will need to also check boxes for specific feedback and possibly general feedback. Both are also contingent upon students' ability to review the attempt. So if you don't allow them to review their attempt, they won't be able to see feedback. The only time you would use the column later while the quiz is still open is if you don't have a closed quiz time set. The column immediately after the attempt applies to the first 2 minutes after a student clicks Submit All and Finish. The only reason you might enable view permissions in this column is if you wanted to allow students to briefly review their responses or see a grade for a practice quiz, for example. This option does leave room for potential cheating or sharing of quiz questions with other sections or classes, and I generally don't recommend using this. Now let's move on to the gradebook. This is a big one. A lot of people struggle with the gradebook in general. The gradebook question that I get a lot is, why does the gradebook or a grade look different for a student than it does for me? This can be very confusing and hard to understand, so let me try to break it down for you. Using the default grade view, the grader report view, you will see the overall course total for your students. When you choose user report from the drop-down menu, you can select a student and view from that student's perspective. So we can see this student's perspective and we can see their grade. So for example, this student has a 100.39. This is a weird gradebook and my points are messed up, but let's just take this as is. So if we go back to the grader report and look at CTL test, the overall grade that I see is different than what the student sees. So this is what the student sees. Okay, it's about 14 points different, percentage points different. So a few things. It's important to realize that as the instructor, you will always see the accurate grade as the student stands in the class at that moment, assuming that you have your gradebook set up correctly with the appropriate weights. Secondly, any item in the gradebook that is hidden from students will not be calculated into their overall grade. Common examples of inadvertent hidden gradebook items are a Turnitin assignment that hasn't reached its post date yet, a quiz that doesn't have points checked under review options to send grade to the gradebook, or simply an activity is hidden on your course page and therefore hidden in the gradebook. A quick glance can often let you know which items are hidden in the gradebook. If you look through, and you can see this quiz is grayed out. So when it's grayed out, that indicates that it's hidden. But sometimes you can't necessarily tell. And the best way to tell if it's hidden is to turn editing on. And in the grader report, a hidden item in the gradebook will have a slash through the eyeball. So sometimes it'll just be for an individual student. Sometimes it'll be for the entire column. If it is a module from Moodle, such as an exam like this, you won't be able to control the entire category because it's controlled by the activity settings. So this typically means that you haven't pushed points to the gradebook. So once you're confident that everything you intend to be visible for your students is visible in the gradebook, you should be able to see the grades more closely align if you turn editing back off. And then we switch back to the user report and go back to CTL test. Now they align. So you can see how hidden items in the gradebook affect what the student sees as their grade. So it's important to communicate to students that their running total grade in Moodle will vary based upon the weighted averages of assignments, deadlines. If your course only has 2 exams, but those exams are heavily weighted, students can get a false sense of high achievement in the class until that first exam, especially if they're doing really well on homework. If those grades aren't entered yet, Moodle internally adjusts to accommodate and elevates the weighting of the front-loaded portion of the course to give a more accurate view of where the student stands at that moment. So if the course were to end that day, they would know what their grade is. So if you essentially let the students know that their grade in Moodle is a general reflection of their overall grade, but may not include everything, and they should not rely on that for complete accuracy, and instead have conversations with you or calculate their own grade based on the syllabus. That's our recommended path for students to take. A final note on this: if you want the students to always see what you see You can change this setting if you go to the drop-down menu in the gradebook to course grade settings. And if you scroll all the way to the bottom, there's an option that says hide totals if they contain hidden items. The default is to show totals excluding hidden items. And if you click the little question mark here, it will explicitly tell you that it's going to use a hyphen instead of a grade if it's hidden. And it is excluding those hidden items. So the total is going to be different in the grader report, what you see, because you're going to always see the calculated totals from all items, hidden or unhidden. And if you include those, they may be able to calculate the hidden items. So they might be able to understand what they got on an assignment, even though you haven't actually graded it. So just keep that in mind. Or you've graded it, but not made it available to them. So that is a personal choice. We set this as a default, but you are welcome to change that for your course if you want, so that those grades are consistent. I hope this has been helpful. If you have additional questions, let me know, and I'm happy to walk through your specific questions. I hope you have a great day.